I think it is no longer a question of will crypto be around? It's just a question of when and what does the time scale look like? If you are in traditional finance and you haven't realized that crypto is going to replace your entire industry, you need to get started looking at this because it's going to be a rude awakening. So I think we're just getting started. And I think we'll see a whole host of new applications that were never possible before. Our vision from the very beginning was how do we make it really easy for people to build apps, right? And today, we power Robinhood and Coinbase and JP Morgan and Polymarket and, you like any kind of major app in crypto, like we're powering the technology. So our secret sauce was just go find the best founders we can and convince them to join us. I think at the end of the day, as a startup, you have one weapon, and that is speed.
And my whole life has been about discovery. What are the opportunities? What is the value that I can create? What is the best thing that I can do? Entrepreneurship is just figuring out things, just like parenting. I would actually call myself a lotus mom, not a type of mom, because I feel I enable them to be better people rather than force them based on outcomes.
Welcome back to Money Majlis, the fortnightly deep dive where we talk about banking, fintech, technology, and everything money. I'm your host, Shubha Sarkar, and I'm based in Dubai. Today, we're going to talk about crypto. Not the Bitcoin and Ethereum crypto, but we're going upstream into the financial plumbing to the infrastructure layer of the blockchain and crypto economy. While headlines still obsess about the price dips and rebounds of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, there's a quieter revolution happening underneath. Platforms, APIs, and tools that make it possible for serious builders to create the next generation of financial applications. One of the most important companies in that space is Alchemy. Alchemy is often described as the AWS of blockchain, a Web3 developer platform that powers a huge volume of blockchain transactions every year for tens of millions of users around the world. Alchemy's infrastructure sits behind everything from NFT marketplaces and gaming platforms to stablecoin transfers and tokenization pilots by major financial institutions. In just about 16 months from its public launch, Alchemy reached a valuation in the region of $10 billion with a team of only a few dozen people. It's a team-to-impact ratio that makes even seasoned Silicon Valley investors sit up. But this episode is not just about a Decacorn. It's about the human story behind it. How does a kid who once sat in a Stanford entrepreneurship class dreaming of the day he might be invited back to speak, end up returning as a CEO of a leading Web3 developer platform? And what does it take as a parent to raise not one but two children who both become startup founder CEOs? To answer that, we have a very special mother-son duo with us in Money Majlis today. But first, a message from my sponsors.
Fab Business Banking presents Money Majlis, a podcast shaping conversations on banking, finance, technology, and marketing. Visit bankfab.com to learn more.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Saxo Bank, the trusted European bank helping you make better investment decisions.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto-as-a-service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is proudly sponsored by WealthBricks Capital Partners Limited, the trusted, independent, and expert wealth management firm.
I have two very interesting guests on my show today. My first guest hardly needs an introduction in the crypto and Web3 world. Nikil Viswanathan is the co-founder and CEO of Alchemy, the Web3 developer platform that powers the infrastructure for everything from top NFT projects and DeFi protocols to enterprises and financial institutions experimenting with blockchain. A Stanford computer science graduate, Nikil has built products at Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. Even before Alchemy, he co-created Down to Lunch, the viral social app that hit number one in the App Store's social rankings and number two overall, landing him on the front pages of major global media. In his Stanford talks, Nikil has shared how the company went from public launch to a multi-billion-dollar valuation in just 16 months with a tiny team, making it one of the fastest growing and most capital-efficient startups of its generation. In another conversation, Nikil has casually noted that Alchemy had raised hundreds of millions of dollars in funding and didn't touch it for a long time because the business was already profitable, a very un-Silicon Valley flex for a Decacorn. Sitting next to Nikil is someone I know personally from our time together at Stanford in 2018, attending the Stanford Executive Program on Innovation. Nikil's mother, Usha Viswanathan. Usha studied commerce in India, did a master's in MIS in Texas, and then, together with her husband Balu, left stable careers to build Starnik, a software company long before SaaS and cloud became buzzwords. While raising two children, Usha and Balu bootstrapped that business through the dot-com boom, bust, and everything after. Modeling resilience, integrity, and a slightly insane work ethic that both Nikil and his sister Tara credit as their foundation. Tara, in fact, is the ex-CEO and co-founder of Rupa Health. So today, we have not just a Silicon Valley founder, but the original founder in the family. Nikil and Usha, welcome to Money Majlis. Any opening comments?
Thanks for having us. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, I was so excited when you told me about this.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. This format is the first on my podcast, a mother and son together. I don't think any podcast in the world has ever done this. So I'm so proud that both of you are on my show today. Nikil, you said that 20 years ago, our world was shaped primarily by governments and countries. But today it's shaped by platforms like Apple and Google, and now by protocols like Bitcoin and Ethereum. For a banking audience that still thinks in terms of nations, jurisdictions, and central banks, what does that shift actually mean for the future of financial infrastructure?
Great question. So let me give you a quick analogy here. When you think about the internet and what it did for humanity, there was a big shift in how people shared information, communicated, and consumed information. Before, there was these kind of centralized entities that controlled information. So if you look at 20, 30 years ago, where did people get their news from? TV and newspapers. That was it, right? And who did you talk to? You talked to the people who are around you in a city. It was very difficult to call someone around the world. And, even when you had long distance calling, it was really expensive. Similarly, and today, if you look at that world, it's very different. If I ask, the average 20-year-old, where are you getting your news from? It's not from newspapers or TV. It's probably from X, TikTok, and Instagram.
Correct.
And today, if you look at money, it's very much the same. We evolved from this world where there was this kind of decentralized individual power barter system, right? I would go to you and say, hey, I want to get 3 sheep and I'll give you 4 pieces of lumber for it. And that's how we started as humans. Then we moved to these entities where now governments and countries control banking and control money. And if you live in a developed country, it kind of generally works. You live in the United States, but anytime you try to do something that is outside the bounds of what is allowable, you run into these problems where you realize it's not actually your money. It is the government's money that or it's your money that the government is controlling for you. A quick example, we were buying our domain name alchemy.com and it was, quite expensive, and we had the money in Bank of America, and we were doing our press announce for our Series B, and we could not get the money out of the bank account in time. We had like a 4-day heads up, and we just couldn't get it out. And one of our investors, and this is like one of the top banks in the United States, I won't say which one to blast them publicly, but our investor ended up having to pay for us, right? And if you live in a developing country, the government, very often inflates money. You lose your life savings. It's very difficult to move money around. Even in countries like India, if you want to get money out of the country, it's very, very, very difficult to get money out of the country. So we are moving to a world just like where the government and media companies controlled information, and now we have this open information world. We're moving to a world where you have money that is actually yours, and you can have that individual freedom. So I think it's like a pretty dramatic shift.
Mm-hmm. And what's the story of your brand name, Alchemy?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we were moving into crypto from our social app, and we wanted a name. So I think one of the first things was being our last name Viswanathan. I ended up being last in like picture day in school and everything. So I want a name that starts with A. Jeff Bezos actually said the same thing for Amazon.
Really?
And
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So we were thinking of names, and the really interesting part is like we had built like 15, 16 social products before. And what we learned very quickly is, the first time you think of a name, you spend like a week thinking of a name, and then you build the app and you're like, oh, this actually, you throw away the app in a week. So then the next time you choose a name in like 2 days, the next time you choose a name in a day. So basically we realized like name actually isn't that important. It's like whether you're actually solving value with your product. But we were doing blockchain. So blockchain is known as, Bitcoin is known as like digital gold. And it is this concept of like, it's like digital money that, money used to be backed by gold.
Mm-hmm.
And we were doing this like hedge fund. Before we had Alchemy as is today, we had this hedge fund data science machine learning platform. So we were kind of like turning data into, and we were like, oh, we can like turn data into gold. So it had all these different meanings. But the actual origin story was there was this bar I used to go on dates on in San Francisco called Alchemist. And I'd come back one night and I was like brushing my teeth and I was trying to think about like what name would be good. And then I was like, oh, Alchemy, the science. It's actually the search for elixir of immortality, but kind of commonly known as turning lead into gold. And I was thinking about it and I was like, oh yeah. And like one of our investors is Will Smith, and he had said his favorite book was The Alchemist. I hadn't read it at the time, but I was like, oh, starts with an A. It's an easy name. It's memorable. And it's kind of like turning data into gold, because we were doing this hedge fund developer platform for blockchain. So that was kind of the name. And honestly, we just made the decision really quickly. It was like, maybe like 10, 15 minutes of thinking about it, and just shipped it. And it's been really great since then.
Very interesting backstory. I like the connection to the bar and to the book. Now, Nikil, if you compare 2017, when you and your co-founder, Joe, started working on Alchemy, to where we are now, what do you think are the 2 or 3 big shifts you see in the past decade or so in digital assets, whether institutional adoption, stablecoins, NFTs, or this new AI crypto convergence? What are the shifts?
Great question. So it almost feels like a completely different world from 2017. If you look at 2017, one of the interesting things is if you read the stories about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, they very much felt like it was too late. They felt like they were late and missed the computer industry. Turns out they were actually just very early. In 2017, we felt the same thing. We said, oh man, we missed it. It's already happening. We're too late. Turns out it was actually very, very, very early. If you fast forward, if you rewind to 2017, Ethereum was just getting started. And it was, this was the real shift where you no longer, Bitcoin is really interesting as like a store of value, but you didn't have this concept of like building, right? And Ethereum gave you this new building block that said we can use money as a variable in programming, and we can like build applications based on money, and that was never possible before. And that's what got us really excited about crypto. If you think about the big shifts in technology, there was computer, which let machines follow human instructions over and over. There was the internet that let machines kind of communicate with each other. And then this new big shift was happening, which was crypto, which was the idea that machines could exchange value. So the big shift that has happened since 2017, if you really want to simplify, is no one believed in crypto in 2017. Everyone thought this is not a thing. It's not going to be around. It's kind of a fake thing. And now that has drastically shifted. And I think it is no longer a question of will crypto be around? It's just a question of when, and what does the time scale look like, right? So I would say the mental model of how the world views crypto is the big shift. The secondary shift is obviously you look at the regulatory environment in the United States, it's like completely different. And I would argue like globally also. Back in the day, banks and institutions, crypto was a small research project. But the governments around the world came and said, if you touch this crypto thing, we will investigate your bank and, potentially come shut down your bank. It was like not very veiled threats where the government said, do not do this, right?
Yeah.
And now at least in the United States, you have an administration that's very, very pro crypto. And I would say like that's the other change. And then the last piece, so there's perception, there's regulatory change. And last thing is the technology just matured a lot. You just couldn't have an application that had any kind of meaningful usage. Like CryptoKitties was one of the big applications early on. And it was like one of the first NFTs. It was actually one of our, I think, user ID number 4 in our database. They were like very, very early at it, like millions of users. And it broke the Ethereum network. And today you can have applications that, hundreds of millions of people use across the globe. And the technology is mature enough to do that.
And talking of technology, Nikhil, you are seeing AI and crypto converging over time?
Yep, 100%. It's really interesting. AI and crypto are extremely intertwined, and people don't realize this. So let me give you a couple examples. There's an argument. So on the crypto being used by AI side, there is an argument that crypto was made even more. And when I say there's an argument, I came up with this theory. So I think it goes. So crypto is made for AI even more than it's made for humans. If you use what do you have to do? You have to secure your wallet. You have to get these seed phrases. You have to send transactions. It's like very manual, right? If you think about the interface that humans are used to, they are used to a bank. They're used to a website. They're used to an app. And these are, user interfaces where I can click through and use a product. Crypto is very much based in code and numbers and zeros and ones. And ironically, that is what AI is good at. If you look at AI, websites and apps are really hard for AI to use. Code and zeros and ones, these kind of things are very, very easy. That is the native language that AI agents use. So if you look at an AI agent today, I just gave this talk at Mar-a-Lago about this. If you look at an AI agent today, think about the properties that they have. Let's say, you have your own autonomous agent. In the future, everyone will have their own autonomous agent that does work for them. What is it? How does it look like? These agents don't have a passport or a bank account. Like they cannot walk into Bank of America and get a bank account because they don't identification. They're not a human, all this stuff. The second thing is they work globally, right? If they want to pay someone on Twitter or they want to pay, another agent around the world, there's agents don't even have a concept of location. That's like not native agent, right? But a bank account can only pay people in your country like that for the most part, right? It's very difficult to do international transfers. The third thing is agents work 24/7 hours. Your agent is your chat GPT is only working for you from 9 to 5. Like that doesn't happen, right? So if you look at banks, you can't send a wire at 5 p.m. Like that just doesn't work, right? So if you look at the properties, and there's a whole other list of properties, but the gist of it is that agents need internet native money, and that's what crypto is, right? Just like you couldn't have agents without the internet, you can't really have agentic commerce without crypto. So that's the first piece. And on the flip side, around AI needing crypto, we just talked about how agents need crypto, but also in a world where everything can be generated, right? If you have any kind of image on Instagram or a video on YouTube, you don't know what's real. And crypto is basically a ledger that gives you authenticity, gives you proof of saying something is real, gives you digital ownership. Like that is the core function of a blockchain. And I think so one of our customers, Sam Altman, actually has another company called World. It's actually a really cool concept. They basically scan your eyeball, and they have these big orbs. It's called World. It was called WorldCoin, and now it's called World. They scan your eyeball, and they prove that you are a human. So now, when you go do a transaction online, you can prove that you're a human, right? Which is really interesting because now, if somebody signs up for your app or site, you don't know if they're human or agent, right? My dad had this tooth filling he needed to fix. We were at lunch yesterday, and I literally asked my agent to call and set up he emailed and used the web form to submit a form for the dentist, right? And they don't know the agent. So this is a really interesting world we're in.
A lot of my listeners, Nikhil, are traditional bankers like me who still secretly think of crypto as that thing my nephew trades at night. What are the most serious real-world use cases you are seeing in payments, capital markets, or tokenization that should make traditional finance sit up and take notice?
Yeah, I think I think the thing is, if you are in traditional finance and you haven't realized that crypto is going to replace your entire industry, you need to get started looking at this, because it's going to be a rude awakening, right? You look at movies or the newspaper industry, and this is kind of like the same thing. Movies and newspaper in the late 1990s were like, oh, this internet thing might come along and change stuff. But when I would ask you this, when was the last time you went and bought a physical newspaper in person? But I think if you look at the way that most people consume their news today, it's like not through newspapers,
Of
right?
course.
It's through the internet. And even movies, like when was the last time you went to Blockbuster and rented a VHS, right?
Yeah.
Not very recently.
Yeah, not
so
recently.
you have streaming through Netflix, obviously. The rails that money moves on today is actually very old, right? Like I believe like the SWIFT system was started in the early 1900s, right? And it got upgrades over the years, but really the money movement system that we operate on today are basically what was built in the late 70s ish. And if you look at the complexity of moving a dollar, so let's say New York, and it's Friday afternoon, and you want to send $10,000 to France, right? Just your buddy in France. The cheapest, fastest, easiest way, simplest way, basically the only way that's really possible is you take a briefcase of $10,000 of cash and you get on the plane at JFK and you fly to Paris. Like that is like the way, because the banks, it takes at minimum, you missed probably the 5 p.m. cutoff, the wire cutoff. Yeah. And even if you made the cutoff, it's not instant. It has to go through a system of correspondent banking, and the transaction could get lost. We sat down with the heads of one of the largest financial institutions in the world, and they were telling us how when they do these reconciliations, you think it's this fully automated system, but it's literally people with like spreadsheets sitting down and like reconciling things, which is crazy. So I think if you think about crypto, it breaks into I would say like 4 main use cases that are really, really kind of strong core product market fit use case. And I'll talk through each. I'm going to give a couple examples. The first one is store of value. We talked about this a little earlier, but if you live in anywhere in the world, 22% of adults in the world don't have a bank account, right? And which is crazy to think about. They keep their money in like hard assets or physical bills or whatever. The majority of the world's banking is not in a stable, non-inflationary country. Yeah. If you imagine, so for example, we were in Vietnam over Christmas break, and a lot of countries remunerate their currencies. So if they chop the zeros off. So Vietnam in the 80s, when you went to buy a banh mi, one of the sandwiches, it was like, 1 dong or 2 dong, right? And today that same sandwich is 100,000 dong. Right. And that happened in the 90s, where you had this crazy period of hyperinflation. So imagine you save your whole life, you have 100,000, US dollars or whatever. And suddenly in the span of a couple of years, that $100,000 that you saved to go buy a house, it can only buy you a sandwich. Like that is the reality for most people. And having a store of value that is not inflatable is incredibly valuable. It is the reason that most people don't understand crypto in the developing countries, because they haven't experienced hyperinflation. If you go talk to people in Latin America and in the Middle East, they understand how valuable this is. So that's number 1, Bitcoin. Number 2 is speculation. So I think you look at crypto trading, you look at prediction markets, you look at meme coins. These are large markets. And to a degree, we have analogies of these in our equities markets, right? The stock market is for speculation. Like that is like literally the purpose of the stock market. Yeah. And it is, it's been around for a long time, and it provides, and I'm being a little facetious because it does provide a lot of value to a lot of people in a lot of ways. It lets the companies raise capital, lets people invest in the companies, lets people get access. So it's actually this great invention. And I think crypto takes that to the next level, where you can speculate, you can buy assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, you can, Polymarket, which I think everyone's heard of, is, the future of prediction markets, and even things like now today, with a lot of our customers like Robinhood, you can go buy stocks in other countries. You can buy US stocks. Like today, if you want to go buy US stocks, it's like very, very hard to do because all the regulations and all these things, and your bank doesn't let you have access to it. But with crypto, anybody around the world can buy access to the US stock market if you want to buy Tesla. So that's the second use case. The third use case, which is emerging right now, this was the one that was everyone always talked about, but is emerging today, and we're actually seeing traction, is payments. Like we talked about, if you want to send money around the world, And the banking system, international banking system, works on these like very antiquated rails, and those rails will be completely replaced by crypto. And those rails, it actually, if the institutions take quick action on this, they will actually not be replaced by crypto. They will have a much better kind of business model as a whole. So one of our partners that we work with and power all their stuff, JP Morgan, the largest bank in the world, they have a digital dollar that they make for deposit tokens. So now if you deposit money at JP Morgan and you have different entities inside JP Morgan, let's say you're Sony, I'm just making up names here, but let's say you're Sony and you have like 100 different companies inside Sony and they bank with JP Morgan and you want to move money around because there's actually like hundreds of millions, actually like billions and billions and billions of dollars that move around internal to a company. And that now goes on existing banking rails, which takes, days to hours to days to move. And now you can have instant transfers between. So like, that's like the first thing we're seeing. But in the future, like all banking rails will be on crypto.
Yeah.
And I think the fourth use case is what we talked about earlier about AI. And I think that's going to be it's like very emerging right now, but agents and agent payments, I think within 5 years, agents will do more commerce than all humans combined.
But Nikil, you often compared where blockchain is today to the early internet. Clunky, not very user-friendly, but full of possibility. If you look 100%. Back at early web use cases like email and simple websites, what are the equivalent Netscape moments you think we'll remember from this first wave of Web3?
Yeah. Totally. I think there's this theory of like skeuomorphism where you take one paradigm and you put it on the next technology and that gives you the initial use cases, but it doesn't tell you what will come in the future. So for example, when you have the internet, you say, hey, I have this idea that I can share information faster. What is the first thing that everyone said? Oh, instead of postal mail, we can have digital electronic mail, which we call email today. And it's like way faster. It's way cheaper. I can reach anyone. And obviously that's like a really groundbreaking invention. But if you said the internet is just email, like you'd be missing most of what happened today, right? Today, I can click a button and a car shows up and takes me to wherever I want to go. Today, I can click a button and food shows up to me, right? Today, I can go communicate with anyone, anywhere, instantly in any format around the world. Like I can FaceTime, I can video, I can Netflix, YouTube, whatever, right? And I think you look at crypto, there's a similar thing where people think, oh, well, if I can move money around, then I can have, faster money movement or I can own my money, which are really, really important. But those are just the very first use cases here. So what we will see is we're still building out that substrate layer, right? Because people think internet started in 95. No. ARPANET, the first version of the internet, started in like the 60s. So it took a while. Like if you look, okay, to give you a concrete example, Bitcoin white paper was 2009, right? I think end of 2008, like early 2009. So you look at when do you think the first AI paper, neural net paper was written, which is kind of the foundation of the current architecture of LLMs. When do you think the AI paper was written?
50s or 60s?
Yeah, it was actually 40s. So it was 1940s. Yeah, really, really. I believe it was 1947-ish, 1947, 1949. So, it's like 80 something years old, and Bitcoin is like 15 years old. So AI, and today we're like, oh wow, AI is the future, right? And I think that crypto is so early, and we're just getting started. But it is this really foundational technology. Like if you think about the 4 technologies that have really shaped our world in the last 100 years, it's this idea that machines can follow human instructions, the computer. Then it was the idea that machines can talk to each other, which is it's the internet. And then, you can argue about the order here, but like then was the idea that machines can think and reason, which is AI. And then it's the idea that machines can have commerce and exchange money like that. And that's crypto. And like, these are the 4 building blocks. So I think we're just getting started. And I think we'll see a whole host of new applications that were never possible before. And I'm happy to give some examples of that.
Okay. Now, let me double click on Alchemy for a minute, Nikil. If Alchemy is AWS of blockchain, what was the painful specific problem that you saw that made you say the developer tools just don't exist? We have to build the operating system for Web3. What was that problem that you're trying to solve?
So we had actually built this like hedge fund data science platform. So we'd done a bunch of machine learning, and my background is actually in AI at Stanford. So I did like AI research and did that for undergrad and grad. And we had built this like hedge fund data science machine learning platform.
Mm.
And it was really interesting. We had coded every single day of our lives for like 15 years. And when we started coding in crypto, it was so hard to do. And we said, look, if this thing is that hard for us to do, then how? And we want this industry to be globally accessible. You have to make, some kid in Africa or India who just got a laptop and doesn't know how to code, like they have to be able to start building stuff very easily. And and if we have a master's degree in artificial intelligence from Stanford and we have coded every day for our lives for 15 years, and it's hard for us to do, it's going to be really, really hard. The industry's not going to work, right? So we said, and if you look at the parallels of the computing and internet industries, there were always these companies that made it much, much, much simpler to build apps. So for the computer, that was Windows and Mac. Microsoft and Apple, what they did is they abstracted the underlying hardware technology and gave you a really easy way to build apps. So you didn't have to code in zeros and ones, right? If you actually use the hardware, you have to write in like basically zeros and ones or very low level assembly languages.
Right.
So, and for the internet, there's a company that everyone's heard of that no one knows. It's called Amazon. Amazon actually has two businesses, one where you buy things, the other one where they make most of their profits, which is called AWS.
Correct.
Amazon Web Services, anytime you open any app, Uber, DoorDash, Netflix, whatever you use on the internet, it's actually powered by Amazon. Amazon runs those. And they basically simplified web development and made it really easy for you to build apps. So our vision from the very beginning was, how do we make it really easy for people to build apps, right? And today, we power Robinhood and Coinbase and JP Morgan and Polymarket and, you like any kind of major app in crypto, like we're powering the technology. But the core idea was apps building is really hard because infrastructure is really, really hard. And let's go help people with that. And today, we're not just a software company. We have like globally distributed infrastructure, data centers around the world, like all this kind of stuff. So think of us as like the developer platform for crypto.
Got it. The stats are crazy, Nikil. I mean, you went from a public launch to a multi-billion-dollar valuation in just 16 months with just 37 people, powering massive volumes of blockchain activity. I mean, what did you do differently in those early days to create that kind of team to impact ratio? And what can more traditional organizations, including banks, learn from that level of focus?
Totally. I think now with AI agents, like we could probably do it with half the team size. I think we were 37 people. We could probably do it with like 10 or 15. There's a lot of things, but I think if you had to simplify it down to one key principle, I thought about this a lot. I was like, what is like the single thing that really made us have a huge impact with a small team? And the secret is, from the first 27 people, 22 were founders or had kind of like built their own product or shipped something in of their own and had that experience. And I think when you look at the ideal teammate for an early stage company, right? Obviously this changed over time, but at the early stage, and I believe like generally throughout the life cycle, you want someone who's really driven, someone who's a go-getter and kind of self-motivated, that you don't have to kind of manage and say, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? You want people who are kind of innovative and like will think of new things and fix things and improve things without being asked. And you want people who obviously work really hard. That's really important. And you want people who get along with other people and can hire and recruit a great team. And, there's a whole list of characteristics. If you're a startup founder, you have to have all these characteristics in some way, shape, or form to be successful. So our secret sauce was just go find the best founders we can and convince them to join us. Right. And really it's very hard to do. There's especially in the early days when you have nothing, everyone thinks crypto is a scam and it's not a thing and AWS for crypto won't be a thing. It now looks obvious in retrospect. It was not. It was very contrarian then. So especially in the bear markets. So I think I credit all of this to our team and like the incredible people we were around.
Got it. So Nikil, you and Joe launched, I believe, 9 different products that didn't really work in the market. Then you went to Alchemy and that was a huge success. What did the failures teach you about doing it better next time?
Yeah, great question. So we actually launched about 16 that didn't work. I think Alchemy was our 16th pivot. And we had other things that worked before, but like not to the scale. So we built Down the Line, which ended up hitting number 1 in social apps in the App Store. It was actually kind of surreal to open your phone and see the App Store rankings. It was like us, then Facebook, then WhatsApp, then Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. I think and then personally, I probably built 100 different products. I have a Dropbox folder of a bunch of different things that I just made for myself and for friends. And now with AI, I'll probably do 100 this year. So those are all like
Really?
manually hand coded. What we realized, there were so many lessons from that, right? And you look at this story, yeah, Alchemy went from launch to $10 billion in 16 months, but we also worked on this for like, man, that was like 9 years, 9 years into the company of trying a bunch of different things. So I think there's just like, Joe and I always said, hey, when we make it, which, I don't feel like we've even made it yet, but, we said, when we make it, we'll tell the story of how like hard we worked and how persistent we were. I think if you look, I think that the key thing to take away is you have to continue persevering, even if you fail. And almost all of the really incredible founders that I've gotten to spend time with, when I was at Facebook, I was an intern. There happened to be one desk next to Zuck, and the exec team, and like that was my desk. Like literally, my monitor faced their kind of exec room where they had all their meetings all day.
Yep.
And so basically, and I remember Zuck, I asked him, I was like, hey, did you know Facebook was going to be the thing? And he said, no, dude, we built like 8 things before Facebook. We thought this like file sharing thing called Wirehog was going to be the thing. We didn't think Facebook, even as it was taking off, we didn't think Facebook was going to be the thing. So I've never heard a story where anyone had their first idea work. I've just literally never heard a story. Our friends have run, if you look at all the companies from like, 5 billion to 150 billion valuation, it's like most of a huge chunk of those founders are friends, and hearing their stories, it's like, it was like pivot after pivot after pivot after pivot. So I think the key thing here is you need to be like attached to the outcome you want. You have to be very willing to throw away all your products, because at the end of the day, you can get attached to your product, but it doesn't matter unless people actually like it, right? So what I tell our team now is, it is totally fine to kill products. It's actually great to kill products. You look at some of the best companies like Amazon, they killed products all the time. You remember the Fire Phone?
Yeah.
Like there's so many products that they killed. For us in particular, the process of iteration, we got better and better and better every single time at how quickly we could iterate. So as a startup, your main weapon is speed. Like that is your weapon, and you have to like decrease that cycle time of how quickly you learn and improve. So if you think about, a quick story, if you think about how, so back in the day when you shipped an app, you had to, on the app, or let's say you built an app, let's say your Facebook, you had to ship an app. It takes a week to 2 weeks to Apple to review it. That's not there anymore. Now they review it very quickly, but a week to 2 weeks for Apple to review it. Then it goes in the App Store. Then you get a week to 2 weeks of feedback. Then you build the app for another week or 2 weeks. Then you put it in the App Store again for another review, and then it's out, and then you get feedback. So that's roughly like a 2-month cycle, right? To get for return on getting an app feedback on an app.
Yep.
We had iterated and made that process faster and faster and faster until, near the end, what we got down to was we would dress up as Berkeley students. We would go to Berkeley and we would walk around campus and go up to random people and show them the app and get feedback. And we wouldn't tell them we made it, because if you tell them you make it, they're not, we're just like, oh, we're interns for this like dumb app we don't even care about. Like, can you just like give us some feedback on it?
Really?
And they would tell us, yeah, oh yeah, 100%. And we would, it got to the point where we got recognized on campus because we were there so much. Like, we were like, oh wait, you guys are still here? And we would show the app. And then after they give us feedback, we would sit down on the steps in front of the building. We would plug it into our computer. We would recode the app right there in real time and show the next person. So you take that 2-month cycle time down to maybe 5 minutes, and like that was the secret. And so we're iterating. So by the time you spend 2 months doing one feature change, we just did that in 5 minutes, right? And so we just learned and iterated so fast, and like that was one of the secrets of product. How we built different products that ended up working pretty well.
Amazing. You work with a number of banks, Nikhil. Many banks in my world are stuck in what I call the proof of concept graveyard. You just described your iteration process. Based on what you see across your client base, what separates institutions that move crypto and tokenization into production from those that stay endlessly stuck in pilots?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I wish there was a magic bullet here. I think it comes down to a few factors. Number one, it comes down to the the temperament of the founder or the leader of the bank and the organization as a whole. There are, just like any other industry, there are institutions which are value preserving, and there are institutions which are focused on growth. If you were just focused on preserving your value, generally is a bad strategy because the world is changing and technology is changing. And if you don't change, you're going to die. But I think the institutions that are, and the higher up you go, the more, like in terms of leadership at an institution, the more likely they are to really focus on growth of the business. So I think to some degree, it matters about the people at the company. The second thing that matters, and this is the thing that has shifted in the last 2-3 years, it's the risk reward trade-off. If you look 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, the risk was my entire business. I'm maybe speaking more for the United States, given like the regulatory change, but you can generalize this. The risk was I had this small research team, like you said, it's proof of concept. And the government says they might shut down my entire business or investigate my entire core business where we make all the money because of this small 5-person research team, right? And there's not much upside here, right? And even if this tokenization thing works, like will anyone use it? Is there any value? Whatever. And that risk reward trade-off is basically pretty bad, right? It's if you're any rational being, like I don't fault these banks for doing that. If you're a rational actor, you're not going to want to take that risk reward trade-off because it's high risk, low reward. In the last 2 years, that is completely flipped, where the regulatory risk, it's not gone. There's still regulations you have to follow, but and still, the Clarity and Genius, or once these get fully finalized, it'll change the United States. You get this ability to take action in new technology without fear of your whole business being regulated or kind of threatened, and the reward has fundamentally changed. Now, these crypto products have gone from proof of concept to the actual revenue generating businesses. So you look at Coinbase; they're generating billions of dollars, right? I believe like BlackRock's Biddle fund, their fund generates in this crypto fund. It generates like 1 to 2% of all the revenue and the business, right? Which is so small, but like non-trivial. And you look at the margins and the spreads, the business models of these crypto businesses is just insane, right? I believe like Robinhood makes, this is all public information, I'm not saying anything private. The Robinhood makes the majority of their profits actually from crypto, is my understanding. And if you look at the spreads on these businesses, right? If you're an asset manager or you're a bank and you have this business of managing people's money, or selling different products like, ETFs or whatever, you're talking about like individual basis points on an ETF or different products that you sell to customers. When I say products, I mean financial products. Yeah. If you look at Coinbase, and these are like rough numbers, but if you stake your Ethereum, you get in the single digits. Staking Ethereum is basically like, or is basically getting yield on your cryptocurrency. Yeah. You get a couple percent yield. Like let's say, like depending on the asset class, whether it's Solana or Ethereum, you get somewhere in the range 3% to 8% annually on your tokens, right? That's interest. Coinbase takes about a third to half of that. So this business is taking 3% interest on all of your assets that you store there, that you stake. That is wild. That is like 100x what these banks make on assets held at their bank, right? So I think we just had our first big developer conference a couple weeks ago. We had Kristen Lemka, who's the CEO of Global Wealth Management at JP Morgan, 1 in 2 billionaires in the United States bank with JP Morgan, and it's like this massive, the largest bank in the world, one of the largest asset managers in the world for private wealth. So they are seeing a huge demand for crypto, and people are really excited about it. So I think, kind of going back to the risk reward trade-off, if your customers are asking about it, if you are having the ability to monetize in a way that's 100x better than what you're monetizing today, that is a huge reward, and the risk has come down. So the risk is flipped from high risk, low reward to high reward, low risk. And I think like if you are a bank, the world has shifted in the last 18 months, and you need to look at this. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind.
Talking about banks, Nikhil, infrastructure is usually invisible until something breaks. You talked about rebuilding major parts of the platform to massively reduce latency while scaling globally. How did you keep moving fast without compromising on reliability, especially when your outages are likely to become other people's headlines, right? Or headaches?
That's a great question. It's honestly really, really, really hard. People ask like, oh, how'd you win this business? And to some degree, we just grinded it out. Like every single day, we have some of the best engineers in the world that are on call 24/7. You get paged in the middle of the night if anything happens. It's a really hard business to run because if we are down for 1 second, the crypto ecosystem is not going to work, right? And if you look at the kind of history of our architecture, like at the end of the day, we're like a technology company that's built this distributed storage infrastructure, this new consensus algorithm, like that is our core tech. And the key thing here is we built this in a way now over years and years and years that's like resilient to failure. So a couple examples, we used to be heavily based on AWS. We no longer are. Now we run our own data centers and we're multi-cloud and all these different things. But when we had an AWS issue, it actually got escalated all the way up to the CEO of AWS. Like that's how serious this was, right? Or for example, we were on Cloudflare and then we actually built our own version of Cloudflare. And so it was really just building the system and then taking every piece that broke and then just replacing that with our own tech or with with redundancy to make it more reliable. Reliability is a core tenet that we've spent, at this point, 8-9 years on. And we have bought companies. We bought a company in Romania. We've done a ton of our own infrastructure. So it's just a very hard thing. This one, there's no simple answer. You just have to grind it out. So.
Got it. This is a good time, Nikhil and Usha, to tell our listeners about the social impact objective of this podcast. Most profits from this podcast, as you know, go to compelling social causes from across the world. Every guest on this podcast gets a $1,000 Money Majlis gift card that can be redeemed for one of the 6 charities carefully selected by me. These are Dubai Cares, Red Crescent, Educate Girls, Save the Children, Rudy A. Menon Foundation for Cancer Research, and the World Wildlife Fund. Usha and Nikhil, you've chosen to redeem your gift card for Dubai Cares, the UAE-based global philanthropic organization working to break the cycle of poverty through education. Thank you. Every listener on this show can also get and redeem a free gift card of $50 on my website, moneymajlis.com. So please visit my website and make a difference to someone, somewhere. See you after the short commercial break.
Running a business means you have to make countless decisions every single day, some small, some risky, yet all pave the way to your success. That's why you need a seamless business banking app that doesn't just react, it anticipates. From digital account onboarding, effortless fund transfers, smart payroll and utility payments, easy digital service requests, exciting rewards and benefits, and long-term tailored solutions, the Fab Business Banking app gives you everything you might need, anytime, anywhere. The Fab Business Banking app, the one app for you.
In Money Majlis, we talk about making informed money decisions. With Saxo Bank, you get access to global markets from a single advanced trading platform. Stocks, ETFs, Forex, CFDs, commodities, and more. With research and tools right there in the platform, it's easier to make sense of what's moving the markets. Learn more at home.saxo.me.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the Middle East and Africa's fintech and digital payments champion. We make businesses happen and economies prosper by simplifying commerce and payments. Trusted by over 250 banks, fintechs and telcos, and 240,000 merchants in over 50 countries. We move fintech forward.
The financial world is changing fast. Institutions need to meet the growing client demand for crypto financial services, but they need a battle-tested platform to build upon.
AquaNow is a leading crypto financial services platform, powering incumbent institutions to launch crypto brokerage, payments, and remittance services for their clients, securely and at scale.
Be part of the transformation. Visit aquanow.com today.
Your wealth deserves an approach built for tomorrow. Welcome to WealthBricks Capital Partners Limited, where wealth is structured, preserved, and grown through trust. Our approach is holistic and covers private wealth, asset management, and corporate finance. Your wealth deserves more than legacy. It deserves foresight, clarity, and confidence. WealthBricks Capital Partners Limited, an independent and expert wealth management firm, regulated by the DFSA.
Welcome back. Today in this special episode of Money Majlis, we are talking to the mother-son power duo, Usha Viswanathan, co-founder of Starnik, and Nikil Viswanathan, co-founder of the Decacorn Alchemy. Nikil, you talked about an early Stanford startup that fell apart because the founding team didn't work well together, and how that pushed you to be incredibly deliberate about choosing Joe as your co-founder. For founders listening to this podcast today, including entrepreneurs inside banks, what are the 2 or 3 signals that someone is or is not the right co-founder for a decade-long journey that you had?
That's a great question. 90, I don't know the exact stat. Somewhere I've seen it's like 95 to 99% of early stage companies die because co-founder disputes. It's like the most common cause of failure. I've been super lucky, gotten to work with Joe, the single best partner for me in on the planet, just absolutely incredible, super smart, super driven, just a great human. It's really hard to find your co-founder. It's basically like, how do you find your wife, right? And you're going to spend more time with this person than your wife or your husband. And the key things I think are really important is, number one, you have to be aligned in what you want long-term out of life. And do you want do you have the same vision for what success looks like in the business? And people have a lot of different opinions. Is it, I want to get acquired by Facebook and just relax. I want to sell for $100 million. I want to roll the dice and just build something really great. Like, even if we end up with nothing, like what does that experience look like? So that's a really, really important one. The other one is you want someone who you handle stress in a very similar way. So I think Joe and I both work really hard, but I feel like we're also pretty like relaxed and chill under, like, obviously when it's intense, we'll get intense, but we're also the first ones cracking jokes in like the most stressful moment. Right. And I think your day-to-day personalities have to be really compatible, because you're going to spend, Joe and I lived together in an apartment for like 5 years while we're building the company. Like I saw him out of 68 hours a week. He had his girlfriend in Palo Alto and that wife. And I probably was with him 162 of those hours. And you go down few hours each week hanging out with his girlfriend. But other than that, like we were like inseparable. And I think you want someone who you really enjoy being with. So there's no magic bullet for co-founder, but I would say, and everyone said, you can't do a solo company. I think that's obviously changed a lot now because now there's AI and all this stuff. But I would say having co-founder is awesome because it does manage your emotions. Like it helps you, like, even when one person's stressed, the other person can help even them out and be a thought partner. You can do a solo company. It's much harder, I think, because you don't have that sounding board and that emotional balance there. But I think the thing is you just have to put in the work. Before I met Joe, I'd interviewed like 63 of the best Stanford CS kids to be a co-founder, actually first engineer at the time. And I was like, I just don't think they're awesome people. It just wasn't the right fit. And then I finding Joe was great.
63. So Joe was 64th.
Yeah, I think I kind of went a little extreme, but I got great results, right? So I think the thing is you just have to put in the work. And honestly, college is the best time to do this because it's much harder to convince people when they're like working full time to quit and join you. But if you're in college, you have an incredible opportunity to go meet a lot of people, or if you're at the same workplace, like, hey, let's go do this as a part-time thing, let's hack on something. I would say the simplest way to test is just try building something with someone and ideally go through a stressful period and see what it's like.
Got it. I like the way you frame impact on 2 axes, the x-axis on how many people you touch and the y-axis on how deeply you improve their lives every day. I love that construct. If you plotted Alchemy on that graph today, where do you think you sit today, Nikhil? And what would it take to 10x both the axes over the next decade?
Yeah, great question. So, good job doing your homework also. This is a graph that I always use, which is kind of like my kind of mental model of the world. You have one shot at life. You don't get multiple chances, right? Religion, reincarnation aside, how do you have a really big impact? And I think the way I measure the impact is on 2 axes. Your x-axis is how many people's lives you touch, like you said, and your y-axis is like how deeply do you improve their life every day. So number of people under that curve. So number of people times depth of impact is is really your impact on the world. And for me, x-axis was always obvious, right? Never before could I press, buttons on this magic metal box and build something everyone on the planet uses. And that, software, internet, like that was what, from a young age, credit to my mom, was why I got really excited about the potential of software, because you can impact everyone on the planet. And the y-axis is like, you really have like daily tangible impact in people's lives. The first product I started at college was like this kind of life coaching, personal development thing, because I was like, oh, that's what's most direct impact. I think the thing about building an infrastructure company is you have indirect impact, but it's really broad, right? So every time anyone goes to Polymarket and does a trade, or anytime you move money on JP Morgan, or anytime you're using Robinhood wallet or crypto wallet, or any of these things, right? Or anytime you trade USDC or Tether or these things, we are very likely powering that technology under the hood, right? And I would think in terms of scale, we're at trillions of dollars processed annually. We are at probably hundreds of millions of end users touching the products that we built. We're still small. It's still very small, right? You look at a Microsoft or a Google or an Apple, they are a couple orders of magnitude bigger than us in terms of impact. And for crypto for us to have the next 10x of impact, it's really about crypto adoption. So how quickly can we get these products in people's hands and have actual utility and actual balance? And how quickly will the countries be open to enabling these products for their consumers?
Got it. On a personal level, Nikhil, what are 2 or 3 principles you treat as non-negotiable in how you operate, whether that's how you treat people, how you make decisions, or how you handle success?
I think the core principles that Joe and I really try to instill in our team are, number one, customer obsession. Just like absolutely focus on creating a magical experience. Like, how do you create this like 11-star experience for your users?
Yeah.
And one of the guiding principles from day one. I think, like, for example, Jeff Bezos talks about that at Amazon. I think they do a great job at it. Another one is speed. We really, really, really value moving fast. I think at the end of the day, as a startup, you have one weapon, and that is speed and the ability to move fast. Now with AI, that's even like more amplified. The other one that we have held as a belief, and I think, this is not a typical one, but we have found that it has served us well. You obviously have to moderate it, which is really like be very people centric and try to take care of your team, do the right thing for them, even in the cases where it's like where there might be a short term difference in what's good for the business and what's good for one of your teammates. But in the long term, I think that has served us really, really, really well. And I think that part of that experience is having fun. Like, I think we value having fun a lot and instill that in our team also. And I think we not even instill that in our team. I think we chose to work with people who enjoy being there, who enjoy coming to the office and want to have a good time. And that's really important to us.
Amazing. Usha, I'll move to you now. Usha, your own journey is remarkable. Commerce in Coimbatore, a master's in MIS in Texas, then the Stanford Executive Program, and along the way, building Starnik as a software company before SaaS was fashionable. When you listen to Nikhil talking about developer platforms and abstracting complexity, do you see echoes of your own shift from traditional accounting to cloud software?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on this podcast. And I was thinking about my journey and what Nikil had. And I think it boils down to what Bill Mormon told us on our first day at Stanford.
Yes.
He talked about discovery beating planning. And my whole life has been about discovery. What are the opportunities? What is the value that I can create? What is the best thing that I can do? And that's how we started a SaaS company in 2003, because just did not want to travel. So instead of building something on-prem, something new had come out that could be done on the web. We called it web-based in those days, and built cloud software. And I think Nikil has similar experience. He's just discovered what's the best thing to do, because when you're doing a startup, you do not know what's the best you can give. But if you stay focused on where the value is, what can you do that the world will love, you get great results.
Absolutely. Turning the clock back, Usha, you read the psychologist Maxwell Maltz as a teenager and realized that we forget our failures and remember our successful outcomes, which motivates us
Yeah.
to further success. You read Ayn Rand, also one of my early influencers, when you were 20. And I believe you're heavily influenced by her theory that mind's mind is his weapon. How did you teach those principles to your children?
That's actually a very interesting question. I don't think I actually set out to teach the principle to them. I think I applied those principles for them. So let me give you an example. When I read about Maxwell Maltz and how he said, success is what is retained in our mind, what I realized was that when children experience success, then it's positive reinforcement to them. So I made it my task to make their life successful. So in other words, I didn't just praise them for doing something. I just showed them ways of doing it so that they became successful. One of the applications is when they would go to class to learn something, we would already have done quite a bit of that before they went to class so that when they walked in, they were confident. They understood what was going on. So the sooner I gave them that information, the better, the more confidence they got in the world. And then with man's mind is a weapon, that was my goal. I realized I just wanted them to be highly intelligent, knowledgeable, curious, learning about the world. And so I did everything in my power to help them achieve that. So it's been a very, very interesting journey.
Usha, you also told me about one trick that you did to inculcate the love of reading in your children. Can you repeat that for our listeners? I found that very interesting.
One of the things I figured out was I wanted them to have a love of reading. I love to read and I wanted to love it. And they did not want to go to bed on time. So I used that. And then I would cuddle up with them. We would read, I would pick a chapter book that had an interesting story. And then just at that strategic point where something interesting is going to happen, I would close the book and say, now it's time to go to bed. And they would beg, they would plead, can we read a little more? And say, no, it's bedtime. You have to go to bed. So turn off the lights and walk away. And pretty soon I'd see them, with flashlights under the covers trying to read that book and get a chapter. And that was one of the tricks.
Great hack, I must say. Very clever. Tell us about your fascination, Usha, with computers and how you were hooked on to the early days of internet through your AT&T subscription. You were so excited, I believe, with the internet that you gave up being a stay-at-home mom and went to college to learn computing and MIS. And then you had to read your textbook on Java, I believe, 3 times before you got it. Tell us a bit more about those days.
It sounds crazy now. Yeah, that time when, the internet was just coming to, we lived in Lubbock, Texas, small town, so it wasn't Silicon Valley. And one day I heard while I was on hold with AT&T, I heard something about WarNet, and I asked the lady what it was, and she said it was dial-up internet. And she said it's 5 hours free, or if you sign up, or X dollars per month. I forget, $20 or something. And I signed up for 5 hours, and within 3 hours, I knew I was so hooked. I called her back and said, "Sign me up for the whole month." It's been nonstop since then. I realized I just loved the idea of computers, internet. And I actually call software frozen intelligence because all your thoughts go in and it's frozen and you build something. So I decided I had to go back to college and learn about computers. And it was so interesting. There were a lot of students who had already had like master's degrees or undergrad degrees in computer science and in other countries that were in my class. And I walk into a Java class, never done any programming except I had taken a COBOL class. And there were, students who have masters in computer science from other universities abroad sitting in my class. I was encouraged to drop the class because I could never hope to get even a C. And I was pig-headed. I said, no, I'm going to take it. The instructor actually had it up on a screen where he highlighted a bunch of folders and moved them to another area. And I was so fascinated. I raised my hand and said, how did you do that? He just stared at me and moved on. But eventually I ended up, I didn't understand the Java book at all. It took me, I had to read it 3 times before I would understand the chapter. I would drop Nikil off at violin class, sit outside, and read that book again and again and again. But I ended up getting the top grade in the class, and I just fell in love with computers.
Amazing.
It was
amazing. You fast forward, you and your husband Balu left very stable careers. You in accounting and MIS, and Balu in medicine, to build Starnik during the first internet boom. And I now know what the word Starnik is, a combination of the names for your children, Tara and Nikhil. Tell me, what convinced you that this risky path was right for your family? And what did those early messy years actually look like at home?
So we just had, both of us had a passion for building something, for starting a company, we called it.
Mm-hmm.
We had recently visited Silicon Valley, and it was, we'd seen all the big companies. It was like walking into a dreamland because you see the towers, the skyscrapers of each company that we had only heard about on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so fascinating to us. So we decided we would start a company. All we had was a name and nothing else. And we tried a bunch of different things when we started. But what really convinced us was that we felt that we would feel, when we grow old, if we didn't do it, we would feel like we missed out on one of the biggest things we could have done. Mm. So to us, it was not even a question of whether we should start. We said, we have to do this, or else, we would really regret. It's kind of what Jeff Bezos calls the regret minimization index, I think. But it was one of the best things we did. Not only for us, but I guess our children, because they saw the ups and downs of whatever we did.
Yeah.
They saw how we struggled, and they helped us when they could. Nikil came down first year of college to help us because a key employee had left, and he built out a lot of infrastructure for us even in the first year. Tara came down. She built our website, and she actually went to Wharton and studied business. And she came back and told me, Mom, they told us not to do so many things in management. And I didn't think anyone would do that, but you're doing everything they told us that we shouldn't do. So I guess she kind of meant it as a joke, but I think she really realized that we could do a lot of wrong things and still succeed. And it's really the perseverance in the end.
Yeah, of course.
And the other thing is, people teach theory and strategy, but you have to practically do things, and everybody's just figuring it out. And I think late realized that entrepreneurship is just figuring out things, just like parenting, right? There's no textbook for parenting. You figure out what works.
Now, there's a theme in Nikhil's talks about optimizing for fast learning, shipping, failing, iterating. As a parent, Usha, how did you create a home where the kids could experiment, fail, and learn without feeling that failure in school or in projects was a catastrophe?
That's a good question. If I think about it, we tried a lot of things when they were young. So if some class was difficult, we would figure out who's the best person that can help them learn that class. We would look for a tutor. I remember walking into a birthday party once, and there was a math professor who was actually one of the guests, and I was chatting with her, and I said, oh, could you tutor my children? And then somebody else who was listening to us said, you actually don't need a math professor teaching your kids. There's something called EPGY at Stanford. And enroll and get lessons mailed to you. In those days, it was CDs.
Mhm.
And I was so fascinated. That evening, I looked it up and then signed up, and we got those CDs, and they did that, the APGY math courses. So it was just, they saw us try out different things in parenting and business. We would talk about what happened because we hardly had time to talk at work. So we would come home and talk over dinner about what worked in the company and what didn't. So they knew, I guess, what we were trying to do and how we were trying and succeeding and failing. We didn't shield anything from them. They saw everything.
And both Nikhil and Tara say that your primary goal as parents was not to raise to CEOs, but raise amazing human beings. Tell me practically, what did that look like day to day? Were there specific family roles, dinner conversations, or rituals you consciously encouraged?
I would actually call myself a lotus mom, not a type mom, because I feel I enable them to be better people rather than force them based on outcomes. I wanted them to love learning. I wanted them to be curious. I wanted them to experience a lot of different things. So we did a bunch of things. It wasn't the education, the experience. My goal was to broaden their experience. So they did everything, like sports. They were both in the swim team, both tennis varsity players. Nikil played a bunch of other sports. Tara loved to do art. She's actually a very good artist. She likes to write. So we bought like computer programs that helped her to write when she was 5 or 6 years old. Yeah. It was just like building Lego Mindstorms camps, any kind of experience that we had that we could give them. We gave them. I felt the world, they needed to understand the world. And the best way to understand that is to be exposed to it. So we tried to broaden the base. Like even I would send them to summer camps every year since Tara was 10 and Nikil was 12. They would go to academic camps in Chicago, actually even in Stanford. But it was always at their wish. I would tell them, it's very expensive. Do you want to go? If you don't want to go, send you. And they would beg to go. They really enjoyed those camps. But we hired a substitute teacher that they loved to come home and do science experiments. But ultimately, this is one strategy that we used. I felt like I couldn't force them. I should not force them in every area of their life to be perfect. So I picked one, and Balu, my husband, supported me totally in this. He was on call 24/7, 365 days a year. So it was very, very hard when they were growing up for him to be there much. But he fully supported me. And what we did was we said, okay, we need to focus on one thing that they need to be absolutely the best at in life. And that was academics. And everything else was fun. So if they didn't do amazingly well on violin or dance or sports, it was fine. It was a fun thing to do.
Correct.
So unlike Tiger Mom philosophy where they have to be good at everything, we just felt like they needed to have fun. And people told us we should send them to boarding school or accelerate them. And I never wanted to do that because, they need to have the childhood experience. So we wanted them to enjoy life, to learn to have friends, to have sleepovers, to have parties, to paint their faces and go to football games. We tried everything we could to give them a good life, to be happy children, as well as on academics. And with academics, it was never about, you've got to get these grades. It's more like, let's see how we can get you to learn this and who can help you learn this.
Amazing. Usha, you and I studied together at Stanford in 2018, surrounded by very ambitious 30 or 40-somethings. The two of us were possibly some of the older members of the class. When you look at this younger generation of founders, including your son and daughter, always on, hyper-connected, what do you admire and what worries you when you think about their mental health and long-term resilience?
I really admire the energy with which they are building the world
Mm-hmm.
because they're builders, right? They're making a change in the world.
Mm.
Um, and I love that they are actually the unsung heroes. They sacrifice their lives and they give more to the world than the world gives to them,
Mm.
which is not often recognized. But I see that with the Stanford folks, with my children. So I admire that they want to carry this burden. If you look at Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged,
Yeah.
they're Atlas carrying the world on their shoulders.
Mm.
What I worry is that there's tremendous stress in this process. And especially when you come to places like Silicon Valley, maybe among the Stanford group, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of pressure, external pressure. You're always comparing with what someone else has done. And I really want them to find that mental peace
Mm.
to by to enjoy the process and not worry about the ending or the outcomes.
Mm.
I really think founders go through a lot of periods when it's really dark and they have to. Elon Musk talks about chewing glass and staring into space.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very
Mm.
true.
Yeah.
And I do worry about that, but I hope with all the new discussions on spirituality and meditation and health, I do see founders taking more care of their health, which is a really good thing.
Was there a kitchen table moment, Usha, for you and your husband when you realized that the family had produced not one, but two startup CEOs, Nikil with Alchemy and Tara with Rupa Health? I mean, was there a moment in time when that happened? And did you celebrate with champagne or just a long lecture on humility?
It's also gradual that I don't
Mm.
think it was a moment.
Mm.
Maybe when I don't know. But we'd seen them grow. So it was very exciting throughout the journey. Whatever they did it was like every week there was something exciting. They try a new product, they're doing new things. We'd go be willing participants. Tara did some acupuncture. That was the first time I had acupuncture done on me.
Mm-hmm.
We were guinea pigs for
Mm.
everything they wanted. We carry around the apps that Nikil built and show it to all our friends and get them to enroll.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it's exciting, the whole journey. So we're very, very fortunate.
All right. After all that serious talk, let's do a quick rapid fire round of questions and answers. One sentence answers, first instinct, and you get exactly one pass at the answer. Okay. Who replies faster on the family group chat? Nikil or Usha?
I think I do.
You do?
I reply I do text messages like once a month and I'll go back.
Usha, what was your college band called? You said you've forgotten the name, but what role did you play in that band?
I was actually the bass guitarist, and this was because I was tone deaf. And I had good friends, and they just stuck me in the back with the bass guitar so that I could be part of the group. It was a lot of fun.
Nikhil, one habit you admire in your mother that you definitely did not inherit?
Reading the book 3 times. My mom would call me before the exam. She's like, how many times have you read the book? I was like, I haven't even opened it.
So Usha, if the Viswanathan family were a startup itself, what would your one-line pitch be?
I think we're the family that loves to learn, loves to experiment, and loves to build.
Excellent. Nikhil, what's yours?
We'll bring the energy.
Like that. Nikhil, if you had to delete one app from your phone for a week, what goes first?
Oh, I've actually done this. Shout out to my sister who kind of encouraged me to do this. I actually don't have any notifications on my phone. I don't even get text message notifications. I get no notifications. I've deleted almost every app from my phone. I was actually thinking about getting rid of my whole phone completely.
Really?
Yeah.
You said to me when I send you emails that you hardly read your emails. How do you function?
Either. If people need to get in touch with me, they'll find a way. And I usually don't answer phone calls either.
Amazing. Usha, what was your most effective parenting hack on Nikhil that you only found out many years later?
I think 1 year, can I tell them this?
Yeah, of course.
1 year, he got addicted to computer games.
Warcraft.
Warcraft. Spent his whole summer in the basement playing that game. And I was so worried when school was about to start. I needed him to stop this. So I took his, in those days, luckily it was a CD. So I took his CD and I hid it in a book I wanted him to read. And he was so upset with me that I think that was the only time he was really upset with me.
Never found it. Yeah. I like stopped playing the video game. I think it was a couple weeks in the summer, but we had this book from Book Fair. I think it was like Indian in the Cupboard or something.
Yeah, Tales of Narnia.
Something.
He had begged me to buy that series. I bought it, but he never took the time to read it.
Yeah.
So I said, well, if he finds it, at least he'll read the book to find it.
I never found the CD.
A question for both of you. What's one small daily habit or ritual that each of you have that keeps you grounded?
I wake up in the morning and I just think of what I'm grateful for every day. I look at, Nikil actually gave me this book about productivity and I started using it. And the first thing you write down is, what am I grateful for? And that keeps me grounded because I think about all my blessings. I'm so, so fortunate.
I do a lot of self-help, kind of inherited from my mom, who got us into this. But I went to Tony Robbins and he has this morning priming ritual that I do 10 minutes every single day. It's like 3 minutes of gratitude, 3 minutes of like healing visualization, and then 3 minutes of goal visualization. I heard about it in 2016. It's been 10 years out of, 3,650 days since then. I probably missed like 5 days, maybe 10 amounts, basically every single day. And every day you wake up, some days you're unhappy, some days you're happy, some days you're stressed, whatever. Every day I wake up, I do this and I feel great every single day.
Fill in the blanks now. For Nikhil, my mother is happiest when ...
We're all hanging out together.
Right. And for Usha, Nikhil is the most himself when
he's building something.
Yeah.
He's learning and building something.
Yep.
And for both of you, a principle or value from home that you find yourself repeating at work more often than you like to admit.
I think that this comes down to Tara giving me advice some time ago about how to run a company. She told me, Mo, you raised us. We turned out okay. Now treat your team like your children. I think when I changed that mindset, my relationship with my team worked a lot better. They told me I had grown up. They would tease me. I have a lot of single women who came in and really learned technology. And I felt very good that I was able to help them with their lives. And they feel grateful. But we have a good relationship where they tell me, you've really grown up a lot.
How nice. How nice. And Nikhil, for you?
Always do right by people and do the right thing, even when it may not be the best thing in business.
Okay. And the final question from me, you can answer this together if you want. Finish this sentence for me. In our family, happiness means?
Hanging out together.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Hanging out together.
Nikil and Usha, this has been a really, really special conversation. We started with blockchains, balance sheets, and AI agents, and we somehow ended up with parenting hacks and family chat dynamics, which is exactly the kind of journey we like on Money Majlis. Behind the headline numbers, a Decacorn level valuation in record time, massive transaction volumes, and a tiny team powering a big chunk of Web3 sits a very human story. 2 parents leaving safe careers to build Starnik, 2 kids watching them ride out the dot-com chaos and everything after, and years later, those kids building Alchemy and Rupa Health at the intersection of technology and very real human needs. For our Money Majlis listeners in banking and fintech, there are some clear takeaways. First, the real revolutions often happen in the plumbing, in the developer platforms, APIs, and infra that make new financial products possible. Second, The institutions that will thrive in this new world are those willing to experiment, partner with builders, and think in terms of impact on both axes, how many lives you touch and how deeply you improve them. And third, whether you're running a family, a startup, or a bank, your culture and values are still the ultimate operating system. Nikil and Usha, thank you for sharing not just the Alchemy story, but the family story behind it. Any last comments?
Thank you, Shiva, for having me on the podcast. This has been a great experience for me. And I want to say that I understand parenting has been the hardest thing that I ever did. So any parent who cares enough to want to raise kids, I think I want to tell them it's going to turn out okay. Your kid's going to be wonderful, because just the fact that you care about them enough to want to learn to do better is sufficient. They will understand that.
Well said. Nikil.
Doing something great in the world is pretty simple. It's not easy to do, but the core formula is very simple. It's three things. You need confidence, you need persistence, and you need constant self-improvement. So you have to believe you can do it. You have to keep going even when everyone else is going to quit. And you have to constantly think about what you can do better. And if you do those three things, you're going to do something great.
Excellent. Thank you both for joining me today.
Fab Business Banking presents Money Majlis, a podcast shaping conversations on banking, finance, technology, and marketing. Visit bankfab.com to learn more.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Saxo Bank, the trusted European bank helping you make better investment decisions.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto as a service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is proudly sponsored by WealthBricks Capital Partners Limited, the trusted, independent, and expert wealth management firm.
To our listeners, thank you all for joining us today on Money Majlis. Until next time, stay well, stay curious, and do good.